Right, good morning everybody. The clock up there says it's 1 minute to 10, but the computer says it's 10 o'clock, so we will start the meeting. Thank you all for coming. We've got quite a meaty agenda with lots of speakers, so it will be an interesting meeting. We'll start, please, with... before I start the agenda, I've just got to read out these notes. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live on the internet and will be available for repeated viewing for 12 months. If you are seated in this room, you are deemed to be consenting to being filmed, and any contributions to the meeting will be recorded and broadcast. Thank you. So we'll start off with agenda item number 1, which is apologies, please.
We've got apologies from Councillor Francis, Councillor Waring, Councillor Cox and Councillor Snape.
Thank you. And just to confirm, we are quorate. Thank you. And item number 2 for members. Is there any declarations of interest in accordance with Standing Order number 16? Yeah. Okay. Could members please remember to use the microphones? Okay.
I represent Hensford and Rawnsley, which is pretty close to Poplars, but not adjacent to.
Okay, thank you. And any other contributions? No? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item number 3, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of October. Got them moved. Are we happy? Okay, thank you. I'll sign those after the meeting. And we move straight on to applications for permission. And we'll start with 4A, which is an application by Wally's Quarry Limited at I'll start again. An application by Wally's Quarry Limited at Wally's Quarry Landfill, Cemetery Road, Newcastle-under-Lyme, and the application number is SCC 220078 full stroke MAJ. And I think David's going to do the presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. The application is to allow waste-carrying vehicles to park on the internal haul road between the hours of 6 and 7, Monday to Friday, excluding bank and public holidays. It seems the PowerPoint's not working at the moment, so I can't move on to my next slides. Okay.
Just check something, Simon. What do we need to do to get the PowerPoint working? Not working on this? Oh, it is now. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Thank you for that. Okay. The landfill site is west of Newcastle-under-Lyme. The site is shown on the red slide. The red star on the slide. Access to the site is from Cemetery Road. The cemetery is opposite the site entrance, along with a lay-by. The landfill site is shown in yellow on the plan, and the planning application boundary is shown in red. So we've got the planning application boundary there, and Cemetery Road runs around the site. Residential properties are located to the east and to the south of the site. A garden centre is located to the north. The photographs on the slide and in the report show the entrance and the hall road of the site. So we've got the entrance there and the hall road where the vehicles would park. The applicant has explained that the Hall Road and Weybridge area would provide a temporary parking area. A plan was submitted showing 11 HGVs on the Hall Road, and a revised plan was later submitted showing an area for the HGV parking rather than a specific number. The orange area on the slide shows the parking, so we have the orange area along the slide there. The permission for the landfill site includes a condition which states that the operations at the site can start at 7 in the morning. No objections were raised by the technical consultees as reported in the report in paragraphs 24 to 36. 6 representations at petition and correspondence from the Thistlebury Residents Association, Aaron Bell, the local MP, and Councillor Huckfield, who was an adjoining member, were received. Silverdale Parish Council have also objected. The concerns raised are summarised in paragraphs 38 to 44 of the report and considered in the observations section of the report. Paragraphs 47 to 69 of the report covers the key considerations. I'll now go through the main points on the slide. It is considered in terms of the general development plan policy and other material planning considerations that the proposed parking is acceptable in principle. Local representations, the Newcastle Borough Council, Environmental Health, raised concerns about highways, including the timings of the HGVs, and that HGV parking should be restricted near the quarry. The petition also requests that the Cemetery Road and the lay-by should be a no parking area or a red route. The applicant has explained that it is not possible for HGVs to arrive at pre-arranged times, and the provision of HGV parking at the site would remove some of the vehicles from Cemetery Road. The County Council's Highways Development Control team have provided responses in relation to the application, the issues raised by residents and consultees, and also the revised plan. A representative of the Development Control team is here today to answer any questions if members have any. The responses from the Highways Development Control team are summarised in paragraphs 24 and 25 of the report. Highways Development Control concludes that it would not be appropriate to recommend HGV parking restrictions or the implementation of a road route. The team have no objections subject to a condition to ensure that vehicles park on the internal haul road as specified within the plan I showed earlier on. The representations also raised concerns about the operation of the site, specifically the commencement of landfilling operations during the proposed hours, the noise and odour generated by the HGVs. The report explains that the County Council Planning Regulation team monitor the site and check compliance with the planning permission and investigate any complaints. Action can therefore be taken if required and if appropriate. The existing permission includes conditions concerning the operation of the site, and these will not be altered. The planning regulation team have recommended conditions including ensuring HGVs engines are turned off once parked and that there should be no sounding of horns. It is concluded that the proposal accords with the development plan and represents sustainable development, and there are no clear and convincing reasons why the permission should not be permitted. The recommendation is to permit, subject to the conditions and the informatives listed on pages 24 and 25, and that the committee clerk inform the County Council's Prosperous Overview and Scrutiny Committee of the decision. Thank you, Chairman. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. We'll move on to public speakers now, and the first one we've got down as an objector is Lee Bernadette Walford. Could you, two things, first of all use your microphone, and secondly, there's 5 minutes for you to speak. So If you begin your presentation, please.
Good morning. Yesterday evening, following a perusal of this application, it threw up a few alarming points that I would like to highlight this morning. The site visit undertaken by the Highways Development Control of the 10th of August was during the school and university holidays. This and the 12th of October shows nothing remarkable. 2 days of observation between 6:45 and 7:30 is quite frankly not showing a true reflection of the problem. We have weeks of audits undertaken by Stop the Stink, Fighting for Our Community, with times, registrations and photographic evidence. The times covered by the Highways Development Control did not encompass the busy commuting times of the school runs. One of the alarming points is that it did not note within the feedback was if the Environment Agency was present at Wally's Quarry on paragraph 25C. On the 4th of May 2022, before the press and lorries and Red Industries were alerted to our plight, 44 lorries entered the site between 7 a.m. and 9:15. On the 20th of October, between 7 and 9:12, 37 lorries entered the site. Remarkably, only 11 lorries entered on the 6th of May when the Environment Agency were present doing on-site checks. On these figures, removing 11 lorries and permitting them to park in the internal haul roads would not alleviate the problem on Cemetery Road. Red Industries have breached the permits 65 times this year alone. They can't be trusted. I have provided a transcript of a meeting where I went to a meeting on the 10th of February 2021 that Audrey Young and myself had with Adam Share and Nikki Burks, who is the Community Engagement Director for Red Industries. Adam Share admits that he used to open the gates at 6 a.m. when he had permission to open at 7 a.m. because everybody turned a blind eye. He was deliberately ignoring the permitted times that he would open the gates until what he called the tag team, Simon Tagg and Aaron Bell, highlighted his breach. Mr. Share was breaching his permit. Of course, Adam Share is an ex-con and does not fear nor adhere to laws or permits, as his track record shows. Within the transcript, Nikki Burks from Red Industries stated, "We've got school children on buses going to school who were stuck in the middle of Cemetery Road, and I don't want my child in the middle of that. We cannot get past," referring to Cemetery Road. Highways Development Control have not covered or observed the busy commuter times around 8:15 a.m. My question is, why not? Adam Share throws Staffordshire County Council under the bus, stating that the council just turns a blind eye. Wally's Quarry self-regulate. Give them an inch and they will take a mile. With an average of 55 lorries entering the site between 7 a.m. and 11 a.m, if you fill 11 spaces on the internal haul roads, then these will immediately be filled with a load of trucks filling the vacant spaces, and they'll queue along the Cemetery Road from both sides. It is my submission that the only way to prevent this is making Cemetery Road a red route. Who is to say that Red Industries will adhere to the 6 a.m. opening times and not start opening the gates at 5 a.m? As they have stated, they can fit up to 24 lorries on the internal haul roads. Who will regulate that? There will be non-compliance. Past performance is a very good indicator of future behaviour. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, and your timing was immaculate. We'll move on next to the Silverdale Parish Council representative, and apologies here, I'm going to try and pronounce your name. It's Henrik Adamchuk.
Henrik Adamchuk.
That's exactly what I was aiming for, thank you. Would you like to start? You've got 5 minutes.
Yes, I've been chair of Silverdale Parish Council for 6.5 years. I'm aware of the noise of waste-laden 6-axle articulated lorries. They weigh 44 tonnes with their full load, and they are noisy. Noise is proportional to weight, and 1 HGV equals 32 super minis. Silverdale Road, that's one of the main routes to the entrance from Newcastle-under-Lyme, is 10.5 metres and very close to lots of houses, terraced houses mostly. It was built 140 years ago and reconstructed many times, so it's an ideal road surface for transferring engine vibration noise to buildings through their foundations and their main structural walls. And a lorry travelling past homes in Silverdale Road, for a few seconds you hear that noise, whether it's 5 o'clock in the morning or 6, whatever time you hear that noise. Now, the number of HGVs parked in Silverdale Road is very low now because we've complained to the police where up to 6 parked vehicles were bumper to bumper. But we don't accept that bad behaviour in the past should require a car park solution, which might imply lots of mental health problems for our community. So Silverdale Parish Council is opposed to the application on the grounds of noise and the possibility that we'll get more and at night time. The permit states 7 a.m. as the start of operations, and it's a universal red line in all these situations. But the company are pushing against that red line. Once they were able to open the gates at 6 a.m, and now we're getting a parking lot put across that red line. We believe the proposal will encourage more 6-axle articulated HGV movements at unreasonable hours on the principal routes. That's the A525, the B5044, that's Silverdale Road, and the B5368, that's Church Lane and Cemetery Road. And there will be a more concentrated noise impacting in Silverdale, in Thistlebury, in town and many other wards, and it will be more concentrated. So in many respects, we're standing up for residents who can't be here because they're not parish councillors or not involved in the parish councillors. And we're very concerned that there's no noise assessment for this application. And we do know that where there's mineral extraction licences, they do include noise assessments. For example, Wakeley Quarry in Northampton. In the Wakeley case, an acoustic report was completed with noise readings from articulated lorries in a test experiment over 6 to 7 a.m. At minimum, that noise condition should be applied to this application, and a consideration of the health implications on nighttime noise from these vehicles. These vehicles are the noisiest of all road traffic. There's international evidence that the transport noise causes sleep disturbance. And the World Health Organization guidance advises for a good night's sleep, the noise within to bedroom should not exceed 30 decibels, and individual noise events should not exceed 45. So there's lots of evidence that these lorries can cause a disturbance. And furthermore, we don't want a lorry park as a precedent for future operations, and that the noise plus the danger of a permanent lorry park in that location are the most concerning issues for Silverdale Parish Council. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you for your timing. Could we now, we've got two speakers on Teams or via Teams. Could we start, please, with Dr. Adrakakis? Could you please confirm that you're online and can hear us properly?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Again, 5 minutes if you'd like to start your presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for allowing me to address this committee today. The Thistlebury Residents Association has been pleased to support this application, particularly as the intention appears to be to resolve the issue of lorries parking outside the landfill site prior to the opening hour of 7 a.m. Allowing for up to 23 lorries to park inside the site would be a practical solution to the problem, given that the County Council and the police appear not to have taken too much interest in the issue. Although a double red line zone was suggested some years ago as a solution, this never materialised. We have been assured by the MJCA report, who with the company drafted this application, that there will be no adverse impact or conflict with the wider operations of the site or changes made to the permitted number per week of heavy goods vehicles, which stands currently at 880 vehicles per week entering and leaving the site, or lorries depositing waste before 7 a.m. This application is important since it is possibly a response to some drivers not observing the already existing rules re their behaviour whilst off-site. As a member of the Landfill Liaison Committee, the TRA has been made aware, as has the Staffordshire County Council, also a member, that the company, although it tries via guidance to control driver behaviour, we are led to believe that the company has no jurisdiction to manage lorries off-site. Off-site behaviour is a matter for the County Council Highways, Traffic Department and the police. However, if this application is approved, hopefully the company will be able to control the behaviour of some drivers once they are on site, and it would appear that strict measures to do this have been presented as part of this application, which will be added to the already existing rules for driver behaviour once on site. It is and always has been the responsibility of all regulators of the site to enforce these and any other on or off-site rules when necessary. Last year, the Environment Agency, as the main site regulator, made 188 visits to this landfill site. So it is highly likely that any breaches to any rules attached to any permission granted would go undetected. Under these circumstances, it would be foolhardy indeed for any company to risk its licence in this way. Given the number of complaints made regarding the lorry lineup outside, it would be useful to know how many times County Council officers visited Cemetery Road to assess the situation. Although this application has been, in our view, a very long time in coming, and the County Council has been, as far as we can see, somewhat complicit in these delays, this application, if permitted, would be welcomed as a possible solution. This is why the Thistlebury Residents Association would wish to support this application as a possible way forward. We understand it will, of course, the permission will, of course, be regulated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the second speaker via Teams again is Paul Lealman. Paul, could you confirm that you can hear us and we can hear you?
Yes, I can, Chair.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes. Please start your presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for providing the opportunity to Wally's Quarry Limited to speak to the Planning Committee today. It is greatly appreciated. We understand that there may be multiple perspectives with regard to objectives and outcomes of the application, but it is our view is that approving the application is an approval based on responding positively to local stakeholders and in particular the community. This application has been requested to discourage vehicles from parking elsewhere, which is considered by the community as a safety risk. The proposal to park HGVs on the site internal haul road prior to operations commencing at 7 o'clock is fully supported by the Highways Authority and is a potentially simple measure which will support vehicles being able to access the site and discourage them from parking elsewhere in the peripheral areas adjacent to the quarry, which we have no authority or legal power over. If we review the origins of the application, there are no operational advantages for Wally's Quarry Limited in proposing the change to the current planning condition. It permits no extra vehicles visiting the site, nor amends the approved lorry routing. It permits no extra waste being deposited at the site, and it permits no earlier deposit of waste at the site than the current start time of 7 o'clock. No physical changes to the existing access and internal haul road or site layout are proposed. Parking vehicles on site between 6 o'clock and 7 will potentially reduce the congestion off-site by allowing vehicles to arrive at and park on site within the hour prior to the start of normal operational activities. It permits only the change requested by the stakeholders, including the community. The statutory consultees to this application have scrutinised the application details, and Newcastle Underline Borough Council Planning, Staffordshire County Council SCC Planning Regulation, the Environment Agency, Staffordshire Police and the Highways Authority do not object to the proposal. With safety as the key motivation, the Highways Authority fully supports the proposal for highways safety reasons, and Staffordshire Police recognise that the proposal is a positive step in addressing local concerns. In conclusion, I would like to thank the committee for listening to this statement and understanding the central objective of the application to provide a well-operated site access and parking at the site to allow vehicles to park on site Monday to Friday in preparation for the site opening time at 7 o'clock. With this in mind, we would ask that this is the central objective is received by the committee in the spirit intended, so they feel able to vote positively for the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've got Councillor Tagg is actually in a meeting next door, the leaders' meeting, so he can't attend. He has, however, sent an email to me and asked me to relay the content of the email to the planning committee. He obviously says he's a local member and for this application, and his words are, I would like to be associated with the comments of Newcastle Borough Council and Newcastle Borough Council Environmental Health Team detailed on page 10 of the report, and I have no objections to the recommendation to permit with the condition detailed in the report. And regards Simon. So that's that. Before I open it up for discussion to members, could I just, again, it's on the screen, remind members that this is purely about permitting the development to allow waste-carrying vehicles to park on the internal haul road between 6 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock Monday to Friday, and that excludes bank holidays and public holidays. And then the second part, as you see on the recommendation, is that when we have made a decision, this will be informed to the Council's Prosperous Overview and Scrutiny Committee, as they've already had this as an agenda item in the future and asked for any feedback that came from it. And then that allows them to put it on a future agenda if they want to. So at which point I will open it up to members to discuss, ask questions as required. David, I see you've got your light on.
I'm lit up this morning, Chairman. Chairman, two things really. One thing I think that we ought to reassure the community about, that this is not an application to increase the number of vehicles. I know it isn't from what we're considering today, but I think that could result in a concern as far as the community is concerned. And I think that a reassurance that this is not a precursor to an increased volume of traffic. The second point I was going to ask, I see that we have a condition within the approval, well, the recommendation on the refusal to use horns on site. And I just wonder whether that would include the use of reversing warnings, which can be very noisy and very penetrating. Would it be practical to put a condition in that there's no reversing on site? I don't know. They're very, very noisy. Thank you, Chairman.
Would you answer, if possible, both of those points?
The horns is, the condition about horns is really just so that they're not sounding horns unnecessarily, other than an emergency, which obviously you would expect them to want to do if somebody was in danger. The reversing, again, is a health and safety requirement, but I wouldn't anticipate a lot of requirement to reverse once they've driven onto site to park. But again, it would only be a health and safety matter, so we couldn't necessarily rule out that requirement. But obviously, the differences with reversing, I wouldn't expect it to be over a long period of time. Unlike some sort of machine on site that's reversing a long way, any reversing would be just to adjust the vehicle in the parking slot during those times. On the rest of the site, they would have normal operating requirements. These are conditions only applied to this permission and this section of Hall Road. So it would be, I don't anticipate any real requirement for reversing, because all they're going to do is park up and wait for the 7 o'clock to then move off and go through the weighbridge. So I don't expect that to be an issue in this case. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Even though this is not a request for further traffic flows down Cemetery Road and into the site, I would have thought that by offering this facility, it would encourage increased traffic flows earlier in the day. And I'm minded as to what the first objector said as regards that this has not been properly analysed during school term. Because I would have thought that the school term hit on Cemetery Road would be the best possible outcome if this was done. And in all probability, in the early hours of the morning, that traffic flow would increase. Because it's human nature, isn't it? If people know it's open at 6, they will, more drivers will get there more quickly, so the front of the queue and all the rest of it. And it's just, even though it's not asking for more traffic flows, human nature is such that this would likely determine more traffic flows in the long run. You look quizzical. I'm not sure I'm articulating myself properly.
Evidence suggests at the moment that they're using a convoy system to bring the traffic to the site for 7 o'clock. Prior to the gates being closed and they've been reminded about that they're not supposed to be there at 7 o'clock, they were parking up nearby, and the gates were open and they were going on site early, or they were parking up nearby when the gates were closed. So it's had a knock-on effect when they were reminded that they're not supposed to be letting traffic on. What we're trying to do here is regularise a situation that happened previously that was seen as a solution, in the sense that allowing the traffic to come on, park up and wait for 7 o'clock. So we anticipate that this will help the situation. It'll prevent the traffic parking up on nearby roads and causing a potential traffic safety, highway safety concern. The noise, the traffic, there is traffic on those roads anyway. The fact that the traffic is there turning up between 6 and 7 shouldn't have an impact on school traffic, for example, at that time in the morning. Simon Hawke, and probably from Highways Development Control, could probably explain a little bit more about this, but evidence from what they've seen is the number of vehicles that turn up and want to arrive for 7 o'clock in the convoy is about the number that we're talking about now. So that's what the evidence suggests.
Sorry, pardon me, Chair. There isn't a likelihood that that would increase if this was put through.
I don't know. I mean, but obviously, if it does increase, then the problem will be that they would have to there'd be only the spaces on site to park up, and there'd be no other spaces. So then maybe what the company would have to do is also include the convoy system to make sure that they're not causing a problem that was originally there, which was the parking on nearby roads. So as far as we're concerned, this provides a solution. But they've already got a solution, which is the convoy system, which they're operating at the moment. They won't need to use the convoy system if parking on site means that has solved the problem. If it's only part of the solution, then they would perhaps have to also adopt the convoy system for any additional traffic. Otherwise, there's no space on site, so they would have to go elsewhere.
So should one of the conditions not be that we insist that they readopt the convoy solution if this ends up not going the way we envisage?
I mean, that's an off-site matter. The only way we could do that is through a legal agreement, in truth. So that would be an additional requirement if members wish to ask for that.
Councillor McMahon, would you like to hear from regulatory control? I think that would be...
Thanks, Chair. I think the thing to concentrate on is what the application is before us. We're just here to see whether we want to open the Hall Road before 7 o'clock because of the issues that have been reported. The same thing was there this morning. The convoy arrived just after 7 o'clock into the site. Didn't really cause an issue from a highways point of view. It seemed to accommodate it quite quickly. It went into the site. In terms of some of the other issues that have been raised, and we haven't been there at other hours of the day, the only thing I would say to that is the application itself, we visited it for the purposes of what's there before us today. So in terms of increasing the numbers to the site, I think you've got a condition on the numbers that's attached to the original permission. So in terms of actually increasing that number of vehicles to the site, that was assessed during the original 2012 permission, that it was found to be acceptable, that the number of vehicles could be accommodated on the highway between the hours of 7 and the closing time on the site. So that's already been assessed and seen to acceptable. I think all we're here today is, do we want the whole road opening to accommodate the vehicles that have been arriving before 7 o'clock in the site, or carry on as they are at the moment with them being convoyed from elsewhere? But either way, it still doesn't cause a problem in terms of a highway objection, in terms of being severe impact or a highway safety issue.
Councillor Hudson.
Yeah, Chair, I've read through the report, and the police are very much in favour of this for road safety for the right reasons, and so are other people. If we're so unsure that this might be the right decision, could we put another condition on there that we perhaps have a trial period of 6 months to see what happens, and if the fears of the residents are, come to volition, then we could perhaps relook at it. But at the moment, I'm tending towards that we should go for it, but if people have reservations, then I'm quite happy to say, can we give it a trial period and see how we go there?
Can I just say, as chair, obviously we've been through the reports elsewhere to make sure it's right. Because of the recent history of Wallis Quarry, it is under a lot of scrutiny. And I think that if you start chopping and changing...
quite a nice person, she doesn't need to hate me or be scared of me.
If you start chopping and changing conditions and reducing them, it confuses not only residents but also the applicants as well. As I've said, this site is under intense scrutiny from lots of different agencies, I know, and the Staffordshire County Council is just one of them. And this application in front of us has been put forward to try and alleviate traffic concerns, as has been mentioned already. Just a view from the officers about the 6-month suggestion from Councillor Hudson.
We do sometimes look at trial temporary permissions where we've got concerns and doubts, or we need to, as I say, literally have a trial period. On this occasion, from an officer point of view, because there were no technical objections, we didn't recommend the trial period, but it's not something, it is something that we've done before, so it is a possibility of members reminded to recommend that.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think that a 6-month trial period is really a practical solution. I would assume that if we approve the application today, then if it goes wrong, it will have to come back to this committee for consideration of an amendment in some sort of way. But I think that at this sort of stage, I would want to recommend approval of the application and no time period on it. But obviously, like all applications, if something was going wrong with it or we needed to re-look at it, we'd have every opportunity to do that and bring it back to this committee. Thank you, Chairman.
Can I just confirm that that's a proposal for approval of the permission? Did you want to come back, Mike? Yeah,
just to clarify on that, so it's clear to everybody, it would only come back to the committee, for example, if there was a breach of the planning permission and that the applicant then wanted to address that breach by applying to vary the planning permission, then potentially it could come back to the committee or a fresh application could be made. So it would be on that basis that it would come back to committee.
I'll bring Councillor Hudson in on this point and then Councillor Sutherland.
Yeah, so hearing that then, so we've got to get this decision right today because we don't get an automatic right to get it right in 6 months' time. So that's where I'm coming from. But, you know, looking at the proposals and the reports that are coming in, I agree that, you know, we should go ahead with this. But it's a question of getting that decision right today because there's no automatic right for us to rehear it again.
Thank you. Councillor Sutherland, please.
Thank you, Chair. There's no doubt about it. This is a delicate balance decision for me. But I am mindful within the report that we're actually trying to do something positive with the on-site parking where you can have discipline, as opposed to off-street parking with all the problems that causes and no discipline. I'm also minded of the speakers here today. It would appear that we're not addressing some of the concerns that they've got, but I am minded also that the leader of Newcastle Council is in the main supportive that we take this decision here today. Thank you, Chair.
If we've got no other contributions from members, no? Could I have a seconder for David's proposal? Okay, Councillor Sutherland. And could we show of hands, please, if you're in favour of it? And against? Okay, thank you. On that basis, you've made a record of the voting, and this proposal has been permitted by the Planning Committee. So we'll move on now, please, to agenda item 4B, which is an application by... if members of the public want to leave, feel free, and thank you for your contributions. In terms of 4B, application by Aggregate Industries UK Limited at Utoxeter Quarry, Spath, Utoxeter. and this application's SCC 210047 full stroke ES, and it's for the importation and temporary storage of limestone scalpings with the erection and use of an aggregates washing plant. So, who's taking this? Graham, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As stated, this application is for the importation of limestone scalpings into Uttoxeter Quarry, along with the erection and use of an aggregate washing plant. The application is accompanied by an environmental statement. The application relates to Uttoxeter Quarry, which is located to the north of the A50 trunk road and the town of Uttoxeter. The quarry lies close to the boundary with Derbyshire, indicated by the red star on this plan. Access is granted to the quarry from the B5030 via a private access road west of the quarry. I can point that out, just there. The proposals relate to an area within the existing quarry defined by the red line on this plan. The yellow area denotes the current existing and permitted quarry's operational areas. The new wash plant would sit in the area of the existing quarry's plant site, indicated by the blue star and taking up an area of 30 square metres. So just point that out, it's just here. The application primarily involves the importation of 200,000 tonnes of waste limestone scalpings, which are generated through mineral extraction operations carried out at the applicant's Colden Quarry, located in the north of the county at Colden Low. It is proposed to transport the scalpings from Colden Low Quarry to Uttoxeter Quarry by road using heavy commercial vehicles, with traffic movements amounting to some 16,200 movements per year. This is broken down as 59 arrivals and departures each day, based upon a standard 275 working days per year. The main driver for the application from the applicant's perspective is that Colden Low Quarry, where the limestone scalpings are produced, does not have a washing plant or silt lagoon, and the storage of the scalpings on that site creates operational difficulties. The applicant contends that a do-nothing option would result in the scalpings remaining unwashed, and without processing, the scalpings are unsuitable as secondary aggregates for the likes of construction and infrastructure projects. This plan provides an aerial view of the site and the proposed wash plant's location and the extent of the current overall quarry operations. Heavy commercial vehicles would deliver limestone scalpings using the sole access from the B5030 and would approach the wash plant via way of the site office and weighbridge, indicated by the green star to the north of the plant site. So perhaps on this plan, if I could point this out, I can see properly myself, but the wash plant is here and the access is just off the B5030. This layout provides a closer view of the plant site area and the general arrangements. The limestone scalpings would be washed using water from the freshwater lagoon adjacent to the new wash plant. If I can point that out, that's just there. The wash plant is there. That's the freshwater lagoon. The washing process would result in limestone being separated from silt and soil and then moved by loading shovel to the stocking area, where it would be temporarily stored, ready for sale and export. Silts and wastewater be transferred to the silt lagoons within the south of the quarry. So these are the silt lagoons here towards the south of the quarry. This snapshot of the plant site shows the general existing arrangements. It also shows one of the main silt lagoons and the freshwater lagoon. New wash plant would be located just to the right of the freshwater lagoon, as seen on this photo. It's not so easy to see, but there's the freshwater lagoon, silt lagoons over here. So we're in that area here. Yeah, just there. To aid understanding of the plant that would be used, this is a typical example of the type of wash plant, including a typical loading shovel. Just to briefly recap and summarise the proposals, they are for the erection of a new aggregate washing plant, more specifically for the washing of imported limestone scalpings, the importation of 200,000 tonnes per year of limestone scalpings, along with temporary storage of washed materials and export, 16,000 traffic movements per year, which amounts to 59,000 HCV movements in and 59 movements out per day, and temporary operations until the cessation of mineral operations. For members' understanding, temporary operations will be subject to the end date for permitted mineral operations at the site. Members may recall that the Planning Committee recently approved a northern extension to Uttoxeter Quarry, extending the life of the quarry by 2.5 years to 3 years until around 2025-2026. The application was accompanied by a transport assessment, which had initially proposed to transport limestone scalpings from Calden Quarry to Uttoxeter Quarry, some 18 kilometres using local and national roads in Staffordshire, that would have passed through local villages, including potentially those annotated on this plan. I'm sorry, but you may just be able to make out the villages here of Alliston, Wotton. After carrying out consultation on the application and further to receiving consultee comments and objections received from residents, the local member and businesses, particularly those who could potentially be affected along the route, further information was submitted by the applicant to update the transport assessment following a request made by your officers. The further information included an offer to revise the route taken by all vehicles associated with the proposals to use A roads predominantly through Derbyshire, and an acceptance to enter into a legal agreement to secure the revised route. This plan indicates the revised route, shown as the blue line here. The site is there, so the blue route follows partly into Staffordshire, then into Derbyshire, up through Derbyshire on the A515, A52 to Calden. No objections have been received from technical consultees, subject to recommendation for conditions in some cases. Objections have been received from the local parish council, Uttoxeter Rural, and from adjoining local parishes that could have potentially been affected along the route between the two quarries, including Wotton, Elliston, Denston and Mayfield parish councils. Some 48 representations have also been received, including objections from the local county councillor, JCB, Alton Towers Estate, J. Earl Greenhall, and residents of villages along the original route through Staffordshire. The general concerns relate to the impact on villages and local roads and users of the roads, including pedestrians. All consultees and those who made representation were consulted or otherwise notified of the further information to update the transport assessment, which was re-advertised in the press by site notice posted at the site and in writing via email or post. Additional comments were received from one local resident and from JCB withdrawing objections, subject to the revised route being secured by a legal agreement. Mayfield Parish Council maintained their objections in respect of the revised route, and Wotton Parish Council and Elliston Parish Council, who are making representation to this committee, maintain concerns relating to traffic. The key issues are the mineral waste planning policy considerations, the site-specific development plan policy considerations, and other matters raised by consultees, and the need for a legal agreement. In respect to policy, it is your officer's view that in principle the proposals accord with planning policy and guidance and would aid to support the economic growth, would maximise the use of an otherwise waste material, and would improve the management and extraction of permitted reserves at Calden Low Quarry. With respect to site-specific policies, in general, no objections have been raised by technical consultees to the proposed operations subject to conditions. However, concerns have been received from a local member for the area, the local parish council, neighbouring parishes, and individual representations regarding the impact of traffic to be generated by the proposals. As presented earlier, the applicant submitted further information which sought to address the concerns raised and has offered to enter into a legal agreement to secure an alternative route that will control HCVs travelling between the quarries. Your officers consider that the undertakings to secure the specified route set out in paragraph 87 of the report are necessary, directly relate to the development, and are fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the proposed development. Overall, it is concluded that the proposed development accords with the development plan and as such represents sustainable development, and there are no clear and convincing reasons to indicate that the application for planning permission should not be permitted. So the recommendation is to permit the proposed development for the importation and temporary storage of limestone scalpings with the erection and use of an aggregate washing plant, subject to, first, the applicant completing a Section 106 agreement to allow the 2016 planning permission to be issued, the applicant and all other persons with a relevant interest in the land for the purposes of the 106, the heads of terms to include those listed on page 54 of the agenda, and the conditions as listed in the report at pages 54 to 56 of the agenda. So, Chairman, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much for an extensive report. We have no objectors who've applied to speak. So we'll move on to the Parish Council representatives, and we've got two representatives, one from Wootton and one from Elliston Parish Council. Could we start, please, with Tim Dalton from Wootton Parish Council. Tim, can you hear us and can we hear you? I think you might be on mute. Yeah. Mr.
Is that
yeah, that's
can
better.
You hear me now?
Yeah, I think you were on mute.
Sorry.
Mr. Dalton, keep your finger away from the mute button, and you've got 5 minutes, please, to give your case. Thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, thanks for inviting us and giving us the opportunity to talk this morning. That was a very good summary of the situation, and we, as residents, are very pleased to hear that the specified route has been broadly agreed. The angle that I'm coming at this from is that the nature of the sanctions applied give rise to questions as to how these restrictions will be policed, monitored and reported. We believe that the nature of the penalties to be imposed on subcontractors may be insufficiently severe to discourage a breaking of the rules, and that the likelihood is therefore that the subcontractors will simply take a chance, particularly in these difficult days. So whilst we, together with the residents of Elliston and Mayfield, Elliston even more adversely affected than we are, we welcome the principle of demanding the use of the specified route. We remain far from convinced that the restrictions will deliver the required objective. That said, we're very supportive of the compromise that seems to have been reached. So our concerns are really about how this is policed and if it isn't policed, the danger to the, given the narrowness of the bridges, we believe that there should be consideration given to a strengthening of the restrictions over the bridges by maybe some sort of weight limit, which would just reinforce the what will happen as a result of the Section 106 being applied as a condition of the application. So we're basically in support of the agreement, but just feel that the weight limits on bridges would help. So thank you again for allowing us to make known to the committee the concerns that have been expressed previously. And I think that it's extremely good that we've been allowed to comment in the way we have, and thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Dalton. I'll ask the officers to answer your question when we come to the main debate on the application. Can we move on, please, to Mr. Rob Watkin? Mr. Watkin, are you there?
I am, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, wonderful, thank you. You have
Good.
5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'm Chair of Elliston Parish Council. Our concerns have been very similar to Tim Dalton's. The Parish Council have been very concerned about this proposal. Traffic issues were already the major concern for our residents, particularly regarding the traffic congestion caused by Alton Towers traffic and also excessive speed of traffic through the village, despite the recently reduced speed limit. This planning application comes along and raises the prospect of a huge increase in heavy goods traffic, which of course we were not at all happy about. The northern part of this route through Wootton, Elliston, etc. is a narrow winding road through villages of Ramsar, Wootton and Elliston. It's generally unsuitable for heavy goods vehicles. The applicant's report ignores this and also ignores the fact that the possibility of 1 HGV every 6 minutes would impact the residents in the villages along the route. The policy of changing the route really, as my colleague Tim has said, should take this problem away. This policy of routing the traffic away from the villages along the more suitable A roads rather than the very unsuitable B, narrow winding B roads would completely address our problems and our objections. But our concern, as it was with the Chairman of Wootton, is how would this routing arrangement be policed? There would be a temptation for contractors on the project to use the shorter route in order to save money, which is important to them in their highly competitive and high-cost industry. So we'd like to see clarification of how this policy of sending the traffic down the A52 would be policed, because it does solve all our objections and problems as long as it is held to. That is all I have to say really at this moment. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watkin. Again, if officers could answer the enforcement question as well as the weight limits on the bridges when we come to discuss the item. We've now got speaker number 3, who is the supporter of this application, and that's Selina Gaskarth. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. Please use your microphone and 5 minutes, please.
Good morning, Chairman and members. My name's Selina Gaskarth from Heaton Planning, who are the planning agents working on behalf of Aggregate Industries UK Limited. This planning application is seeking permission for the construction and use of a new aggregate washing plant at Uttoxeter Quarry, which would be used alongside the current wash plant located within the mineral processing area of the quarry. The wash plant would be a mobile model which would be smaller than the current wash plant, but is needed to provide additional washing capacity at the quarry. It would be used to wash limestone scalpings which would be brought from the applicant's Colden Low Quarry, approximately 13 kilometres north of Uttoxeter Quarry. The limestone scalpings from Colden are suitable for use in construction infrastructure and landscaping projects. However, for the limestone to be sufficiently clean to be used in these applications, it requires washing to remove the soil, silt and debris. The limestone cannot be washed at Colden Low Quarry as the site does not have a wash plant or a silt lagoon to collect and manage the wash water. Furthermore, their storage at Colden Low Quarry causes operational difficulties as space is very limited and the stockpiled material restricts access to the underlying mineral which is permitted for future extraction. This leads to double handling in order to move the stockpile aggregates to other parts of the site. Following feedback on the application from consultees regarding the routing of HGVs travelling to the quarry, a revised HGV route has been proposed where HGVs would use the A52, A515 and A50, passing through parts of Derbyshire, which avoids the smaller settlements such as Elliston and Wootton. These roads are designated lorry routes and are considered suitable for the proposed level of HGV traffic. The revised route has been discussed with both Staffordshire and Derbyshire County Council's highways departments and National Highways, and these parties have accepted the proposals subject to the routing being specified within a legal agreement. Draft heads of terms would be agreed so that an agreement on routing could be secured subject to granting of planning permission. Site-specific management measures would be implemented at both Coldon Low and Uttoxeter Quarry to ensure that drivers follow the agreed route and that site management has documented procedures for dealing with any breaches. Aggregate Industries already ensures that drivers sign to confirm their agreement to follow any specific HGV routes and operates a 3 strikes and you're out policy for all drivers, including contractors. This means that any confirmed breach of the route by a driver would result in an initial verbal warning followed by 2 written warnings, with any subsequent breach resulting in a permanent ban. In terms of timescales for the proposal, the wash plant and importation of limestone would be linked to the life of Uttoxeter Quarry. The wash plant would therefore be removed by the end of around 2026 and the land restored as part of the wider quarry restoration scheme. The exact date would be dependent on the issuing of the decision notice for the northern extension to the quarry. Questions have been raised about the sustainability benefits of the proposal, including the transportation of the limestone from one quarry to another. Without washing, the limestone scalpings would typically be used in applications such as quarry restoration, where they would be used as fill material. However, by washing the limestone, it would enable it to be used in higher value applications such as construction and infrastructure schemes or landscaping, where it can be used in place of primary aggregates. Preparing materials for reuse, for example by washing and cleaning, lies towards the top of the waste hierarchy as it conserves the use of natural resources such as limestone and is preferable to the materials being sent to landfill or land recovery schemes such as quarry restoration. It's also worth noting that the limestone scalpings would need to be transported to customers from Coldon Low Quarry anyway, regardless of whether they're washed or not. This proposal is therefore seeking to conserve the use of our finite natural resources through the use of secondary aggregates and maximise the value of the limestone scalpings, which would otherwise have to be discarded. We support the recommendation for approval of this planning application and respectfully ask the committee to grant planning permission subject to appropriate conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Selina, and thank you for giving the committee your proposals in terms of the enforcement. I hope that the parish councils were listening to that.
Oh, yes.
Okay, could we please, we've got Councillor Hudson, who's not going to speak apart from as a planning committee councillor, but we've also got Councillor Philip Atkins, who wishes to speak, I presume. Okay, Mr. Atkins, you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to start off by, I think most of the issues when the planning application was first put in have been addressed by the applicant. The route going down the A52, the 515 and the A50 takes the traffic away from the villages of Elliston and Wootton. The chairman of Wootton was referring to Huckford Bridge, I believe. It's not. Derek hasn't got a bridge named after him in my division, Huckfield. It's Huckford. It's a very narrow bridge at the bottom of the hill, but it's quite strong, and it's also the main entrance to Kevin Quarry and has been used for a number of years. But Wootton itself has got a real problem at the tollgate corner. Houses have been damaged there for a number of years, and we haven't come to a solution for that. And Elliston as well it's a quiet country village and it has got some traffic, but to have that amount coming through it would be quite bad, as along with Denstone and Roaster. But as you go down the B50-30 corridor, it becomes heavier in traffic, and by the time you get to the Roaster, it's one of the main accesses. It is the main access to JCB HQ, and it's also one of the main accesses to Alton Towers. And so while I'm pleased that we've addressed this traffic issue. There is the matter of enforcement, which 3 strikes and they're out. And I'm sure that the residents of Wotton and Elliston will be taking down vehicle numbers to make sure that that happens. But my main concern is the timing of traffic leaving the quarry with the materials on it to save money. Because the B5030 A50 junction, which is commonly known as Project B, if you want to drive from JCB to Utoxeter, when they leave the factory around any time between 4:30 and 5:30, 6 o'clock, because they stagger the leaving times, you're in a 20-minute queue. So I would suggest that the quarry doesn't send lorries out after about 4:30, 5 o'clock at night, because they'll just add to the traffic queue on that junction. The proper queue is a grade separated junction, but that's many years away. The other issue that I'm sure Utoxeter Rural Parish Council would be worried about is rat running, extra traffic, people going through the village itself, trying to get onto the A522 at Beamhurst. There's issues around that, but also the lifespan of the quarry. And because I'm a member of the liaison committee, and we know that there isn't as much sand and gravel in the permission that you granted some time ago. There was talk of 6 million tonnes. It's probably under 3, and some of it is not financially viable, I'm led to believe, to actually mine out. So I'm quite pleased that there's an end date in the next 2.5 years, and then we can get on with the restoration of the quarry, which is what the public benefit, which would really help the local residents with sports field pitches and the like, which are planned at some future date. So the sooner we can get an end date to the site itself, the better. But I do accept that it is the place to wash these scalpings. And I'd also just like to add that I think aggregate industries have taken on board local residents' complaints and have done quite a good job on the application. So, you know, hats off to them. It's not very rare that I praise an applicant, but hey, thank you, Chairman. I've got to go to another meeting now, I'm afraid. It's I Love Utoxeter.
Thank you for the presentation, and enjoy I Love Utoxeter. Thank you. Right, we'll now move towards councillors asking questions and clarification. Could I ask the first question, and could we address the 2 questions from the parish councils for a start, please?
I'll go first, and then Graham, if you want to add anything. Just to say, from an enforcement point of view, obviously it's a legal agreement, but like any planning matter, it could be enforced. I think through a court order, John was telling me. But otherwise, you've also heard that it's a strong set of requirements or undertakings from the operator as to what they will do. And you've heard the 3 strikes and you're out. You know, and all that's laid out in the legal agreement, and it's, you know, at the end of the day, it's their undertaking that this is what they will do. They will enforce that themselves. Obviously, if we find breaches, and as has been mentioned by Councillor Atkins, if residents spot lorries going on routes that they shouldn't be doing and report them, and then they would be investigated and drawn to the attention of the applicant. So it's no different to what we have with other lorry routing agreements. It's not unique. This isn't a unique, bespoke one for this. And as I say, the requirements within the legal agreement as proposed are similar to what we've got elsewhere, and that generally work pretty effectively. And I say at the end of the day, it's the operator saying what they will do and how they will enforce that agreement. The point about the weight limits on the bridges, I think the problem with the situation there is that's bridges that will not be used as part of this route, so it wouldn't be reasonable or necessary for us to start putting requirements in on a route that's not going to be used. So I don't think that would be, from a planning point of view, something we could reasonably say that we'd want to do to require that as part of this planning permission or legal agreement. Don't know if you've got anything further to add to that. No? Okay.
Members? Okay. 2 seconds. Okay. Philip Hudson.
Yes, Chair and fellow councillors. I do see the need for this washing to be done at that quarry. And I can also say that the quarry management have been very cooperative with both of the local county councillors. When this was first sort of suggested to myself and Councillor Atkins, we had a meeting with the quarry manager and we gave them our feelings about the routes and the potential problems that we had, and I'm glad that they actually listened and addressed that. The only issue that we may have is that obviously it's going to make the A50 a lot busier now, and particularly at the McDonald's roundabout. So, you know, but that's the best route, you know, coming down the 52, the 515 and the A50 is okay. Some of the local residents you talked to were a bit worried about whether the sports hub would go ahead, and I'm assured that that has the washing of the materials at the quarry has no bearing at all on the potential sports hub and when that may start. One thing I am a little concerned about is that we were due to finish quarrying in 2023, and then the restoration of the land to the east, which would be a wildlife area, whether that will go ahead. So it's important that we do look at a potential sort of end of quarrying later on, but I understand that a future application is going north, not coming back towards Uttoxeter. The only thing is, condition 13 about the mud and dirt coming off the lorries, they're going to turn left and come back towards the A50, and it says there's going to be a requirement that we don't have any mud and dirt on the road. I don't know how that's going to be dealt with, but you know, obviously that will cause me some concerns. But other than that, I'm quite in favour of the proposal, and I'm glad that the aggregate management listened to local councillors and residents and have put the route in, which I think is satisfactory. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have, before David, we bring you in, David, some sort of clarification on wheel washes or whatever to cope with mud on the road?
Yeah, I'll be honest, it's hopefully a fairly easy one. That the lorries already go in and out of the quarry, so there's already arrangements for that. So this is just making sure that the lorries associated with this permission comply with the same requirements of not to deposit mud on the road. And just to clarify as well, the northern extension you said about, yes, that was approved at August committee, subject to a legal agreement. So that is already through, subject to that. So we'll be issuing that hopefully fairly soon. Looking at my colleague here, that legal agreement is progressing. We've also got the 2016 planning permission, a legal agreement with that, which is connected with the sports hub that you're aware of, and that one is fairly imminent to be issued. It's when that's been issued that we can then approve this planning permission, or we can issue this planning permission, I should say, again subject to the legal agreement as well. So there's all things are sort of tied up primarily with the original 2016 permission being issued, and then once that's done, the sports hub is secured as part of the legal agreement associated with that. Okay.
Does that address your concerns? Thank you. Councillor David Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I reassure the parish councils that are concerned about breaches of the condition of the route that I have a similar condition on a quarry in my division. I have no record of any vehicle whatsoever not complying with the condition. I think that one has to consider that the penalties are so high to an operator that breaches the condition that they would not wish to do it. And when you look at the route, I mean, I've never gone all the way up that route, but I would suspect that to take a heavy vehicle up that route and over the bridges is probably slower than the recommended alternative. And so if there's no other speakers, Chairman, I would recommend approval of the application.
Thank you. So we have a recommendation. A seconder from Councillor Hudson. Show of hands, please. Okay, any against? Okay, that's a unanimous permit for that application. I'm going to suggest a 5-minute, only 5-minute welfare break, and then we've been going for an hour and a half, so back here for 25 past and off again. Thank you for all coming back in at the stated time. We'll start off again with application 4C. This is by Biffa Waste Services Limited at the Poplars landfill site, Litchfield Road, Cannock. And the application is to vary conditions 2 and 3 and 23, and we'll take the presentation now. Is it you, David again? Thank you, David, and we'll progress with this.
Thank you, Chairman. Poplars landfill site has been operating since the 1970s, and the current permission was granted in 1989. The application is to amend conditions on that permission to revise the layout of the site, revise the restoration, and to effectively to relocate the void space within the site. The applicant has indicated that the potential for adverse effects from the site for residents living on Litchfield Road would be reduced by the proposal. The landfill site is located in Cannock, as the Chairman has indicated, and is shown by the red star on the slide. The site is in the South Staffordshire Greenbelt, and the M6 tile is to the south, so the M6 tile runs along the bottom there. The site boundary is shown in red on the site. Within the site, there is an anaerobic digestion facility, which is that area there, where the dot is, and a depot operated by, both of these are operated by the applicant, so the depot is there, and also a household waste recycling centre, which is run by the County Council, which is that area there. The entrance to the site is off the A5190 Litchfield Road and the A460 Eastern Way roundabout, so that's on the slide there. There have been a number of developments in the vicinity of the landfill site. Paragraph 5 of the report details some of these, including residential, business and commercial uses, such as houses to the north of Litchfield Road, which is on the slide, the construction of the West Midlands designer outlet, which is the MacArthur Glen outlet fairly recently, and also the Kingswood Lakeside development, which is located to the south of the site there. Moving on to the proposal. Non-hazardous waste would be deposited on land to the southeast of the corner of the site. This land is adjacent to Hickling Road, which is near the Kingswood Lakeside area, and then inert waste will be deposited in the northern part of the site on land along the Litchfield Road. The inert waste would tie in with the surrounding levels. I'll show that in more detail on the next slide. A restoration plan and profile have been submitted along with surface water management scheme. The site would provide approximately 9 years of void capacity, and on completion of the waste importation, approximately 10 years would be required to import soils and to restore the landfill. So this slide shows the operations at the moment. That's in green on the slide there. Then this is where the inert waste would be deposited. The brown area shows the restored area of the site, this area here. And the blue area is the temporary capping of the site. And the light brown area is where the non-hazardous waste will be deposited. So you've got the area there. So that's in a number of 3 phases, as you can see with the blue arrows. Those photographs have included to show the current operations in the top photo, and the bottom photo shows the area where the non-hazardous waste would be deposited. So that's between where the photo was taken and the buildings in the distance there. A revised restoration plan has been submitted, as I mentioned, which includes lagoons as part of the site drainage for the site. A separate application has been submitted by Biffa Waste Services to retain the anaerobic digestion facility. As I mentioned, it's in that area there. And an application would also be needed in the future to retain the household waste recycling centre. No objections have been raised by technical consultees as reported in paragraphs 28 to 46 of the report. 9 representations have been received and concerns have been raised, and these are summarised in paragraphs 40 to 50 of the report and then considered in the observations section. Councillor Thompson has stated that a cessation date should be conditioned. The land should then become an area for residents and wildlife. The operations along Lichfield Road should be finished and the operations move further away from residents. Councillor Thompson has also indicated that the final levels shouldn't exceed the levels set out in the application. A local councillor, Councillor John Quadroulis, has also indicated a closure date should be as soon as possible. Paragraphs 53 to 138 of the report covers the key considerations, and I'll go through the main issues on the slides. The current operations are carried out in accordance with the 1999 permission, and it's important to consider the effects of the changes to the development plan, the site and its surroundings. The site continues to operate, and there have been significant changes as I detailed earlier with the development of the M6 tile, the houses to the north, and the MacArthur Glen designer outlet. The development plan has been updated and it's also detailed in the report in Appendix 3. The National Planning Policy Framework, the National Planning Policy for Waste, the National Planning Practice Guidance, the local Waste Local Plan and the Cannock Chase Local Plan are all relevant and are all new since the permission was granted in the 1980s. It is considered that the planning benefits of the proposal outweigh the material planning objectives and that the proposal is acceptable in principle. Moving on to the site, specific development plan policy considerations, and consultees and residents have raised some concerns about the application, and these are detailed in paragraphs 73 to 124 of the report, including the cessation date, the restoration scheme and the impact on the green belt. The current permission does not include an end date. The cessation date is when the approved landform is completed. It is considered that conditions should be included to set out these timescales. A timescale condition would set out the cessation date for other permitted uses within the site. As indicated earlier, a restoration scheme has been submitted due to the changes to the landfilling. This plan was updated to reflect comments from the County Council's flood risk management team and to address matters raised in one of the consultation responses concerning drainage. The applicants provided additional information to address these concerns. The flood risk management team confirmed no objection and recommended a condition to require the implementation of the drainage strategy document submitted with the application. The local business was reconsulted and did not provide any further comments. A complaint was received last week concerning the existing drainage, and BIFA have contacted the neighbouring property to address these matters. The flood risk team was also reconsulted regarding this complaint and have recommended an additional conditions. The County Council's Environmental Advice Team have recommended a condition requiring a detailed restoration and aftercare scheme for the whole site to be submitted, and conditions are also recommended to review the working and restoration plans for the site. Paragraphs 98 to 110 of the report provides the Greenbelt policy context. In this case, it is concluded that the changes would not have a significant impact on the openness in the Greenbelt and that there would be no need to refer the decision to the Secretary of State before planning permission is issued. Residents raised a number of matters, including the impact on property prices and site management. Members should be aware that the value of a neighbouring property is not a material planning consideration, and also that the day-to-day operations of the site are controlled by the Environment Agency, who have not objected and have stated that an amendment to the environmental permits would be required. BIFA also organised a planning liaison committee meetings to provide updates to the developments of the site and also to address any issues that are raised. At the time of writing, the planning regulation team confirmed the last complaint was in 2020. As mentioned earlier, a complaint was received last week, and this has been dealt with. Moving on to the need to review and update planning conditions. Planning practice guidance indicates that planning authorities can impose new conditions, providing the conditions do not materially alter the development. It is considered reasonable and necessary to update the conditions and also to include additional conditions. Paragraph 131 of the report provides examples of the conditions to minimise the impact of the waste development and to ensure that the landfill continues to operate to high environmental standards. Finally, on the slide is the need for a legal agreement. A planning obligation or Section 106 agreement would be required to ensure the operator provides an up-to-date statement confirming financial provisions are in place to secure the restoration and aftercare of the site. This statement should be secured as part of, as I mentioned, a 106 agreement. The proposal accords with the development plan and represents sustainable development, and there are no clear and convincing reasons why the permission should not be permitted. The recommendation is to permit, subject to the signing of a 106 agreement, the conditions and the informatives listed on pages 99 to 104 of the report, and also the additional conditions that have been recommended by the flood risk management team to require the submission of details of perimeter drainage and a construction environmental management plan. Thank you, Chairman. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I've got a speaker. Number one is an objector. That's Michael Horton. Oh, apologies. Right. Chairman's reprimanded. We have no objectors or parish council representatives, but we do have a supporter for this application, Mary Tappenden. Would you please give your presentation? Microphone on, 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak at the meeting this morning. My name's Mary Tappenden. I'm a chartered town planner and I'm planning manager for Biffa. Can I start by endorsing the contents of your officer's report and the recommendation that is within that report, please? So Biffa took over the operation of the Poplars site in 1997 following the acquisition of the Poplars Resource Management Company, or PREMCO, the waste disposal arm of the County Council at that time. The acquisition included 3 sites, including Meese and Marchington, and in 2017 we became the freehold owners of all 3 of those sites. Poplars is a very important landfill site. It's a strategic facility serving Staffordshire and the wider West Midlands region to take non-hazardous waste that cannot be recycled or used for the recovery of energy. Landfill across the country is a declining resource, but it's also an essential resource. We will always need landfill, and it is important that we make best use of the void space that we have remaining. So Poplars has approximately 3.9 million cubic metres of void space left, currently approved, and that at current rates would last for approximately 9 years. Since we first started operations, we've secured the restoration of approximately 2/3 of the site, with 1/3 left to be restored. The site undergoes regular reviews already to assess the restoration progress, and those reviews are submitted and approved by Staffordshire County Council. The site already has the benefit of a planning permission and is fully operational. We are currently infilling in phases G4 and G5 to the east of the anaerobic digestion plant, as Mr. Bray pointed out. Under the approved phasing plan, we would continue to move north into the next phase, which is right next to the Lichfield Road and the residential properties to the north of the site, all of which have been built since landfill permission was originally granted. So there are 2 main reasons for this application. The first is to move the permitted void space away from the Lichfield Road to the southern end of the site and to move our operations away from residential property. Second reason is that Biffa secured planning permission for an anaerobic digestion plant in 2010, and that plant sits in the approved landfill void space, also at the Lichfield End Road of the site. To infill the area occupied by the AD plant, we would need to remove that plant within the next few years. So the AD plant offers a valuable service, turning food waste into electricity, most of which is fed into the national grid, but some of which is fed by a private wire to the Sainsbury's Cannock store, effectively taking the Sainsbury's store off the grid. That plant generates 6 megawatts of electricity, which is enough to fuel 10,000 residential homes. The AD plant is extremely important, not only because it diverts food waste away from landfill, but also because it contributes to the security of energy supply from non-fossil fuel sources. So in summary, this application seeks to move the approved void space, which is close to residential properties and where the AD plant sits, and to move that to the southern end of the site. There's no increase in approved void space proposed, and there's no increase proposed in the overall height of the site. Finally, this application provides members with an opportunity. The planning permission for the site is now 33 years old and was granted before the current environmental permitting regulations were in force. The permit has 31 conditions, many of which are out of date and which are more properly the remit of the agency. The key omission from permission, as Mr. Bray has pointed out, is there is no end date, and this is an issue that has been raised regularly with us at local liaison meetings, quite understandably, since we first took over the site. This application provides you with the opportunity to issue a new modern consent with up-to-date planning conditions and to impose an end date that gives certainty to local residents as to when the site will cease to operate. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we've got a local member, Councillor Thompson. I understand you've got an interest before you start your 5 minutes.
I have, yes, thank you. Thank you for letting me speak this morning. I'm actually the chairperson of the Cannock Chase District Council. I just wanted to make you aware of that. Planning, I do apologise, planning, sorry.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Aspiration is always a good thing.
No, I don't want that one.
Can you therefore give us your presentation? You've because you're a councillor, isn't it time?
Yes, yes, I will do.
Thank you.
What we're looking for today is for the residents of Rumour Hill, Hawks Green, Heath Hazen, Norton Keynes is reassurance that if this planning application does go through, that Biffa will give us an end date for, I think what we've said is 2030 and restoration 2041. Also that the height won't get any bigger than what it is stated in the application. And also in 2019-2020, we suffered awful gas smells, which I will admit that Biffa did work with us as local residents and local councillors to manage that and restore our faith in them. However, we just don't want a repeat of it. So we're just asking for reassurance as councillors and residents that this won't happen again. And as I say, that the date will go through and we will have a date to close and say that, yes, this is the end of the site itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well done. We'll throw this open to councillors at this point. Any points before we start debating from officers? I think the two main ones for me are just a reassurance that we've had sufficient information on the flooding to make sure that that's sorted, because it has been a problem in the last couple of weeks, I understand. And the second question is just confirmation of the cessation dates. Please.
Thank you, Chairman. On the flooding, yeah, we had an issue raised very recently from a neighbouring business on the Kingswood Lakeside site about flooding onto their land. This was raised as David explained, or received as a complaint. It's been examined. Biffa have addressed it and have been in touch with the neighbouring. Our Saturdays is in hand. In addition to that, we did advise that and we've shared that with Biffa, who are happy with the additional condition. And that it will be addressed by condition. As far as the end date is concerned, again, as has been explained, the current permission doesn't have an end date, so one of the benefits of a new permission would be it would impose an end date. I should say that the planning permission has an end date. It's not a guarantee. An applicant could come forward at any point in the future if they could finish sooner, but equally, if they don't get the waste in to achieve the levels that they want, they could apply to extend that date. Doesn't mean to say we would permit them to extend that date, but just wanted to make that clear. It's not in tablets of stone. It's a planning permission that can be varied. As I say, the site could finish sooner if the more waste comes in than was originally anticipated, or it might take longer. But if it has to take longer, or they want it to take longer, then they'd have to apply for planning permission to extend the end date. Okay.
As local member, are you happy with that response?
Yes, I am. Thank you. As the gentleman says, if they have to extend that date, then I would come back as an objector for that date. Thank you.
Right. Well. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair, and I support that station date entered in. I think, as with all quarries that don't have dates on, I think that's unfair to the local population and residents in particular. And this is a well-developed site. And when I think of the housing and employment land that's been developed over probably the last decade or so, I think it's timely and it's apt that we do put a cessation date in today. So I would be proposing that we do that.
Was that a proposal?
Certainly was, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments from members? Could I have a seconder then, please? David, thank you for that. We've got a proposer and seconder for permission of this application. Could we have a show of hands, please? Okay, any against? No, fine. Thank you very much for that. So we'll now move on, please, to where I was about 10 minutes ago, which I shouldn't have been. Application by Tarmac Trading Limited at Croxton Quarry, Freehay Road, Cheadle. And this is for a lateral, in brackets, northern extension to extract a further 4.65 million tonnes of sand and gravel, and a consolidating application covering all mineral extraction operations. Okay, so who's going to do this one? David again. Busy morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sand and gravel extraction has taken place at the quarry for a number of years. Planning permission was granted earlier in the year to change the working phases, and these operations would cease in November 2023. The application is to extend the existing site, as Chairman's indicated, and to consolidate the existing operations. This application would allow the extraction of 4.65 million tonnes of sand and gravel at the site. The extension area is an allocation in the Minerals Local Plan. The quarry is located within Staffordshire Moorlands, to the north-east of Freehay and south-east of Cheadle. The site is shown on the slide and in the report's plan by the red star. So that's just there. The plan on the slide shows the application boundary in red, which includes the existing site, and the extension is shown in yellow. The area adopted in the Minerals Local Plan is shown with a dotted blue line, that area around the yellow part there. The site is bounded by the B5032 Ashbourne Road, which is along the top of the site there. Sandy Lane, which goes around the side there. Coppice Lane, which goes around there, and also Counslow Road, which is sort of that area there. Access to the site is from Coppice Lane, and just there. There is a vehicle route secured by a Section 106 agreement, and this directs lorries to use the A522 Cheadle Road via School Lane. So they use the exit or entrance there, and then go out sort of along that road there and out of view on the map there. The nearest residents are properties to the extension. The nearest residents to the extension area are to the north and the northeast and to the east of the site, including Counslow Lodge and Counslow Cottage, and properties at Threap Wood. So the properties that's the closest to the extension area. Got a couple of slides for showing the photos. The top photo shows the extraction area, the extension area from the quarry, and it's obviously on the base there of the quarry, and the bottom shows the view from the viewing platform, which is on Counslow Road. So I'll just go back and show you where that is. So that's about there on the slide. Phasing plans have been submitted showing two areas, two phases of the existing quarry, and then 4 phases of the extension area. The extension area is currently woodland and agriculture. The combined total of sand and gravel output from the existing quarry and the extension would be 6 million tonnes and take 10 years, followed by a further 12 to 24 months to complete the restoration. No changes to the transportation arrangements, including the vehicle route or operating hours, are proposed. A right-of-way is located within the extension area and would need diverting. So this slide shows the existing operations to the south of the site, as I mentioned. So that's phases 1 and 2 there, and the extension area, which is the other area up there. And plans have been submitted showing how the extraction would take place within each of these phases. The extracted sand and gravel would be put on a conveyor, which would run along a dotted line on the plan there down to the plant site. So that's the dotted line. This shows the concept restoration scheme, which was revised following comments received. The plan shows a diverted path, which includes a section of path along the boundary of the quarry from Sandy Lane to Counslow Road. So that from that point there to effectively that point there. So that's a new part that's been introduced as following comments from the objector. No objections have been received from any technical consultee, as reported in paragraphs 24 to 25 of the report. As I mentioned, a representation has been received, and the concerns are summarised in paragraph 47 of the report and then considered in the observation section. Moving on to the key issues, which are covered in paragraphs 50 to 138 of the report. I will now go through the main ones. The national and local planning policy recognise the importance of minerals for sustainable economic growth. The extension area would maintain production at the quarry following the exhaustion of the permitted reserves, which is anticipated, as indicated, to be next year. The proposal is acceptable in principle, given that it would maintain the provision of sand and gravel from a site allocated in the Minerals Local Plan. The Minerals Local Plan includes development considerations for each site allocated within the plan, and the proposal should address these considerations. Paragraph 62 of the report includes a table summarising how these considerations have been addressed by the applicant and also considered by consultees. It is concluded that the applicant has satisfactorily addressed the development considerations subject to recommended conditions and the terms of a Section 106 legal agreement. Consultees and the representation have raised concerns relating to the loss of habitat, visual impact assessment and ecology, noise, dust, air and light pollution, and the impacts on the footpaths and highway safety. These are discussed in paragraph 64 to 118 of the report. The representation raised concern in relation to the loss of habitat, and the County Council's Environmental Advice Team have also commented on the restoration of the scheme and the biodiversity net gain. A landscape and visual impact assessment and ecological impact assessment have been submitted with the application, which concludes that the proposals will not result in significant impacts. The applicant has submitted a revised concept restoration plan and an updated biodiversity net gain to address comments from the County Council's Environmental Advice Team. Biodiversity net gain is a new requirement which requires all planning permissions granted to deliver a minimum 10% gain calculated using a biodiversity metric, the approval of the net gain plan and habitats to be secured for at least 30 years. The County Council's Environmental Advice Team have confirmed that the restorations of the site would create large areas of habitat, including species-rich acid grassland and broadleaf woodland, and the updated metric is sufficient to provide the off-site compensation for the loss of habitat within the extension area on the wider site. The Environmental Advice Team raised no concerns subject to conditions, including the need for a comprehensive and detailed restoration and aftercare scheme for the whole site and also for habitat monitoring. The representation, as I indicated, raised concerns about noise, dust, air and light pollution. And that noise assessment and dust and air quality impact assessment were submitted with the application. And the recent planning permission includes conditions which require a range of measures to control dust, to limit and to monitor noise levels. Planning practice guidance includes guidance relating to noise standards for mineral operations, for normal operations, and also for noisy short-term activities. The County Council's Noise Engineer and Staffordshire Moorlands District Council Environmental Health Officer have no objections subject to the existing noise conditions and an additional condition to set a temporary noise limit during the period when the sandstone overburden is being removed. The Staffordshire Moorlands EHO have also indicated that a dust monitoring scheme should be required along with the existing conditions. Lighting is also located within the existing plant site and limited to the extraction areas with lights being on the plants and quarry vehicles. The existing operations are covered by a condition which would restrict the hours, and a condition is recommended to control external lighting. It is concluded that, subject to the conditions, the proposed development will not give rise to any material harmful impacts in terms of noise, dust, air or light pollution. Concerns have been raised in relation to the diversion of the right-of-way and its cessation on the Ashbourne Road. The applicant has explained that a permanent diversion of the right-of-way would be needed, and the diversion would improve connectivity of the wider right-of-way network. In response to the representation, the route of the path has now been revised, as I mentioned earlier, to include a section along the northern boundary of the site. The County Council's right-of-ways team has no objection in principle and has recommended conditions to require further details to be submitted. The representation raised concerns in relation to the use of the Ashbourne Road for HGV movements. This road is not included in the approved route, which is shown in the report. So therefore, Highways Development Control have no objection, subject to the inclusion of the existing conditions and the continued use of that route. This application provides the opportunity to look at the existing conditions and the existing legal agreement. The conditions that were issued earlier this year are still considered reasonable and necessary and would need to be updated subject to minor modifications, such as the new conditions that are recommended in the report. The undertakings secured by a legal agreement are listed in paragraphs 131 to 135 of the report, and these include the existing undertakings in terms of the approved route. These remain relevant and meet the tests set out in the national guidance. No new undertakings are considered necessary. The proposal accords with the development plan and represents sustainable development, and there are no clear and convincing reasons why the permission should not be granted. The recommendation is to permit, subject to the signing of a Section 106 agreement, the conditions and the informatives listed on pages 146 to 135 of the report. Thank you, Chairman. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much for that presentation, and we'll move to the first speaker, an objector, and that's Mr. Michael Horton. Mr. Horton, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Chairman.
And we can hear you. Mr. Horton, you've got 5 minutes to give your presentation in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm a local resident who responded to the original planning application back in March this year. I live with my wife and 2 children in the small village of Stafford, where we all enjoy making use of the local countryside for exercise, walking, running and cycling. This includes the footpaths, bridleways and country lanes, particularly in the ancient and historic area between Cheadle and Alton, where the quarry is located. I've always lived in the Staffordshire Moorlands, moving to Cheadle in 2000 and to Stafford in 2017. We currently live 600 metres from the nearest existing operation and 300 metres from the newly proposed extension. Whilst I've not been nominated to represent the community as a whole, I do believe that my views and expectations are aligned to those of my neighbours. I have read through the responses to my earlier representation, which have been forwarded by David Bray from County Planning, and it's these responses that I'd like to discuss further. The email from Jenna Conway dated the 14th of October gave no assurance that aerial lighting would not be used, instead simply stating the main requirement for lighting is surrounding the plant site to maintain operational safety. Lighting within extraction areas is limited solely to lighting affixed to mobile plant or quarry vehicles. Further clarification and assurance would be welcomed as to if this would include generator-powered mobile lighting rigs. With regards to operational hours, Jenna Conway goes on to state, operational hours proposed are a continuation of that already approved. The previously approved operational hours were based on extractions taking place significantly further away from residential properties, and it should not be assumed that these will be automatically transferred to new operations under a separate planning application. Should the application be approved, this would inevitably mean excessive noise, vibration, dust and light polluting. Reduced operation hours from 8 AM until 5 PM Monday to Friday and only during daylight hours with no weekend working would be appropriate given the proximity to homes. This amounts to 45 hours per week rather than 66 hours as proposed and would lessen the local impact. Track lane vehicles using a backstop have a very loud metal on metal clack, clack, clack noise when moving forward. This was not mentioned in the original noise assessment and is already audible from existing operations. Again, reduced operating hours would lessen this nuisance. Little regard and no clear plan has been proposed regarding the rerouting of the existing bridleway, although I do take note of some of the comments that were made just now. This is proposed to terminate on the Ashbourne Road, which is a 60-mile-an-hour road, unlit, with no footpath and poor visibility, and it would undoubtedly lead to an accident, especially during the busy summer months with increased Alton Towers traffic. This is already an accident hotspot. Cyclists, horse riders, runners and walkers would have no alternative but to walk alongside the carriageway. A more sensible route would take the bridleway along a broad hedge and tree boundary, and perhaps 15 to 20 metres wide along the Ashbourne Road, joining up with the existing Hounslow Old Road, meeting up with the existing bridle path. The loss of habitat mitigation is proposed by Richard Hunt of Ram Sanderson, a report dated the 2nd of November. It fails to provide a timeline for restoration in terms of commencement or when maturity is likely to be met of the existing habitat. Has assurance been received that the cost of these restorations will be met in full by the applicant and that funds would be placed in trust prior to any work commencing? The report also fails to consider loss of habitat to the locality beyond that of the quarry activities. Earlier this year, between 100 and 120 acres of mature woodland were harvested by the Forestry Commission, sited 1.1 kilometres northeast of the proposed extension. This has yet to be replanted, but would typically take 50 to 75 years to reach previous maturity. To summarise, the application, Tarmac are proposing that they remove the grassland, trees, hedges and ponds from a beautiful area in order to extract millions of tonnes of sand and aggregate. It would be unrealistic for any sensible person to think that a development of this nature would not have significant impact on the local wildlife population for at least the short to medium term. I accept that the demand for aggregates has been significant since the COVID pandemic, and that Tarmac must continue extraction to fulfil this demand and commercial expectations. There is scope for extraction to continue at Cropston Quarry without leading to such a devastating local impact. If the quarry extension was to be approved, I would ask that consideration be given to the points I've raised to mitigate...
Mr Horton, you've had your 5 minutes now.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, and officers have noted what you've said. Can we move on to, we've got no parish council representation, but we have a supporter next, Mr Nick Atkins, who's in the chamber. Mr Atkins, you've got 5 minutes. Please put your microphone on.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I'm Nick Atkins, Strategic Planning Manager for Tarmac. I'd like to start by thanking your Planning Officer, Mr Bray, for a very comprehensive written report and also a comprehensive presentation to you in connection with this planning application for the lateral extension to Croxton Quarry. This application seeks permission to extract, process and sell 4.65 million tonnes of sand and gravel from the extension area located to the north of the existing quarry in land that is in the ownership of the company to complement the remaining 1.3 million tonnes of already consented reserves. It is important for members to note that this application does not propose any changes to the existing working practices at the site. Permitted hours of operation, HGV numbers, routing and the method of working, including transferring the extracted sand back to the plant site via conveyor, would all remain as existing. Similarly, controls relating to air emissions or dust, noise and lighting all remain conditioned as existing. And to address Mr Horton's concerns, those impacts have been assessed based on the location of the operation, the new operation compared to the nearest residential properties. And as your technical officers have reported, they are considered acceptable. In line with the existing quarry, the extension area will be restored to a mixture of high-quality woodland and heathland, and across the whole quarry footprint, a significant biodiversity net gain of over 10% is proposed. The proposal will also see an overall gain in the amount of public access through the provision of replacement and additional bridle paths. A local liaison committee used to exist at the site, but ceased meeting about 8 years ago due to the lack of attendance. As part of the community engagement process in support of this application, we appealed to 4 new resident representatives. I'm delighted to confirm that we now have been able to resurrect the liaison committee. It's chaired by Councillor DeVille. It's already met twice this year and will continue to meet on a 6-monthly basis. Tarmac consider community engagement to be an essential part of its ongoing operations and support the inclusion of planning conditions relating to this ongoing liaison. Members, subject to your approval, the application will protect the direct employment of 24 existing personnel associated with the quarrying operation. The extension will also provide an ongoing product stream to the on-site dry silo mortar plant, which has the benefit of a separate planning permission, and will protect the ongoing employment of 15 operatives there, together with the indirect employment of hauliers associated with both operations. There has been no objections raised in connection with this application from statutory consultees, and the comments raised from Mr Horton, local residents and Checkley Parish Council during the community engagement associated with this application have been acknowledged and addressed through the provision of additional rights of way, additional advance hedge and tree planting along the northeastern boundary of the extension area, and the re-establishment of the liaison committee. And accordingly, Tarmac would strongly endorse the office recommendation to approve, subject to planning conditions and the Section 106 planning agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Atkins. In terms of local member representation, I was approached by Councillor Mark DeVille yesterday. He did say that there was now a liaison committee, that was actually working really well as a vehicle to address problems, and he got no further comments. So can I, at this point, throw it open to planning members for any comments on this application? No? You're obviously all happy with it.
Move it, Chairman.
I've had a proposal to move the application from Councillor David Smith. Have we a seconder? Councillor Johnny McMahon seconded. Could I have a show of hands in favour, please? No, none against. Okay. So that application has been passed, and thank you for your presentation, and thank you to Mr Horton for his presentation as well. Okay, and we'll move on to the final but probably most exciting part of the agenda, and Mike's going to give us an update on Planning, Policy and Development Control half-year performance report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is my half-year report. It will deal with planning policy making, development control performance, staffing and caseload. So in terms of policy making, just to say that we've published now our 17th annual monitoring report, and that report concluded there was still no immediate need to update our minerals or waste plans. And we're currently finalising our new report, AMR, which also indicates sufficient permitted reserves and there's still no immediate need to update our plans. This slide shows development control performance in the first 2 quarters, and it shows that we're performing well. You can see at the top there 9 out of 10 applications on time or within an agreed extension of time. No appeals, although we have now had one, Whiston Golf Course, but that was not a feature in these statistics. Only a couple of county council developments, again, dealt with on time or with an agreed extension of time, and applications determined under delegated powers is 83%, which is pretty close to the target of 80%. Did that move? No, it didn't. There we go. And the next slide shows that this is a comparison with the previous 2 years, just to see, and it shows that mineral waste applications was higher than the same period last year, but the same as in the period before that. Again, relatively small numbers, but you can get a sense of where the applications are in comparison with previous years. And this is a slide for those members that attended the training will be familiar with. This is our team, just so a reminder, really, this is who we are. Just to say that our senior planning officer has now retired. He retired last week before last, Andy Crislow. We also have managed to have held interviews for the vacant planning information offer post and offered that post to somebody who we hope will start fairly soon. Other than that, Chairman, I haven't really got much else to add. That's my report. Thank you.
I'm sure members will agree with me when we say thank you for what the staff have done in a very professional and forthright manner. David.
Chairman, can I recommend that the report be noted? But I'd just be interested to have a comment now on the fact that we have extensive working from home, how our new planning officer will be integrated into the team and feel part of the working group, which in the past has been a very close operation. So move the recommendation, but would welcome a comment. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you for that. We work hybrid like a lot of officers at the County Council now, working from home and in the office. Generally on a Wednesday, the team come into the office as a good way just to have some face-to-face time, which is important. In terms of the planning information officer, I've recently had the experience because we had a planning information officer 12 months ago who, again, to help them learn the job, they worked from the office, and I spent a lot of time with them, supporting them in that. And part of the interview process was to explain that would be an expectation going forward, and the candidate that we actually offered the job to has said that she would expect to be working from the office as well. But as I say, then we have regular team meetings each week, so they would get to know everybody in the team that way. But thank you for the question.
Okay, we've had a move it from David. Can we have a show of hands to acknowledge it? Thank you. And there's no exclusion of the public item, so thank you all for what's been actually quite a meaty, interesting meeting. So thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman. Will you tell us when we're not live anymore?